It's just been a really long walk. Well, as I say that, someone just threw a rock into the window of the Bank of America building right to my right. That just happened. Obviously, for the anti-capitalist march, big banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, that's the target, essentially. And we just saw Target acquired on the Bank of America building right here in Pioneer Square.
So, John, we understand that the police said if there was any damage done to property or people, they would move in. Have you seen any police moving in?
I'm coming.
They're setting off here.
Okay, we are seeing now.
Hopefully you can see us.
We're seeing a confrontation happening between a police line and a lot of tear gas being exploded. This is where Danielle Lee is at the head of the protest. Danielle, describe what you're seeing.
That's right, and I don't know if you guys can, I don't know if you can hear me right now, but several flashbangs went off, police coming in. There's one right there about to go off, possibly. Flares, they are coming in with their bicycles, batons. They are moving in quickly. We saw a huge accumulation of unmarked vans, and I can tell you those are likely filled with police who are filling out right now as they try to break up this crowd. Essentially what happened is some protesters tried to make a turn. We now have police, if you can see, standing to my right here with a flashbang gun. The protesters are throwing Roman candles at the police. It's almost like all-out warfare. Protesters throwing the rocks. There goes another flashbang. A lot of Roman candles. There's another one there. But we are walking with the police who are holding the guns right behind us. Now there's flashbangs pushing us forward, yelling at us to move quickly. Down. I think the thing that did it was that rock that went at that Bank of America building. Chaos as these protesters try to disperse and run away from
Well, they're not messing around.
They're pretty startling. The mace has stopped.
I just got hit with a rubber bullet. Heads up.
We are continuing to move on with the police who are actively pushing us forward as we're now toward the back of this protest. Heading now down 2nd Avenue still. Being pushed toward police who have formed more barricades at 2nd and Yesler right now is where we're at. Police continuing to yell, keep moving, and protesters not having a lot of opportunity to do anything other than run right now. There is someone carrying some milk that we've seen, likely because of all the mace. It burns. It also burns your skin when it's on your skin, and a lot of people have been hit by that, and we've been seeing them douse themselves with liquid to try to wash that off. So that's what's going on right now. We're going to continue to monitor this scene and check back in with you as that occurs.
Danielle, thank you very much. We are now looking at video from Sky King. We're above 2nd Avenue near Yesler, just above near Pioneer Square. You can see the bulk of the black-clad protesters are continuing southbound on what appears to be 2nd Avenue. And here is a ground-level shot. You can see the officers using their bicycles to corral people, to push them forward, to keep them moving. They are not letting these people have a chance to stop, to target any buildings or any individuals, or to cause any vandalism. They are just continuing to manage this crowd and push them down 2nd Avenue.
The chants of Black Lives Matter have been pretty frequent here. Right now, Seattle Police continues to push us. As I look down the hill here on 4th, there's a projectile someone threw a glass bottle at the police. That's not going to lead to positive things. We're going to back up a little bit. But if you look down 4th, underneath Royal Braun, there's another flashbang. There's a huge line of police down there, and one would expect that they're going to try and block them in. Another glass bottle was just thrown to hit a protester by accident. Heads up. Another flashbang here on the back end of the march. Seattle Police continuing to try and disperse this crowd. But there might be a fire back there. The marchers, some of the marchers continue to throw back, and there's someone down on the ground over there. I'm not sure exactly what that is.
Okay, so John, it seems like they're trying to disperse the crowd, but where are people supposed to go? Is there a place where people can run and get away?
Well, I'm sure if they made it clear that they wanted to disperse, they probably would, but where they keep throwing glass bottles at the police, so they're not making any effort to disperse. They're making an effort to try and take aim on the police. The police are now sprinting down 4th to catch up to the gang. We're going to run down there with them and see what's going on. Definitely at least 3 or 4 bottles were thrown at the police. Police shot back with some flashbangs, and I did see a gentleman down on the ground.
Go, go!
Bike. And he was down on the ground, not exactly sure how he got hit. It may have been with one of those bottles because they were hitting a lot of different people.
You okay?
Yeah. We'll go back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you, John. We're going to go over to Danielle Lee right now. Danielle, how are things on your end, on the south end of this procession? Okay, we're going to stay with John's shot for a little bit. You can see now that the patrol officers are actually bicycling up to catch up with the main group of protesters who are walking southbound on 4th Avenue towards CenturyLink Field. We understand that there are Molotov cocktails being thrown at the officers who have, I must admit, shown a lot of restraint as they try to disperse the crowd, move the crowd further south past CenturyLink Field on towards Safeco Field area along 4th Avenue. Here is a shot from 4th Avenue on the rooftop here. We're seeing some of the officers coming into the area, rerouting traffic so that the motorists will not get involved with the anti-capitalist marchers. We continue to hear the shouts on the ground. There is a lot of shouting. There are a lot of insults being thrown between the marchers and the officers. Officers, again, using their bicycles as a fence, if you will, to move protesters in the direction that they want.
So we just saw 2 people get arrested. It seemed like they got caught up in the bike cops as they were trying to move the line. I think they tripped over each other, and one of the friends was trying to help the other one out. And they've since been taken down by the police. They've pushed us back so we can't see what's happening afterwards. But it looks like at least 2 people are going to get arrested here.
We have been actively being pushed forward, and I can tell you that the protesters are trying to get up onto the on-ramp of the freeway, and police have formed a blockade to block that. That's their next move. It looks like we are largely surrounded. A lot more flashbangs going off. I did see protesters throwing glass bottles at the police, so there have been a lot of acts of aggression toward police. You can see abandoned clothing and other paraphernalia. Protesters had been hiding rocks in those clothing, so it's not just a shirt or a sock, it's actually rocks. And so that's what we've been seeing. You definitely, as an individual out here, need to stay out of the way. We've talked to a lot of people who say they wanted a peaceful protest. They came out here to protest capitalism and what they fear is unfair policies, and that every year it gets hijacked by a few people who choose to act out, and then it's chaotic and everyone's angry, including the police. But you can see, I mean, look at this. Well over 100 police right here, I would guess. They've also blocked us so that you cannot get up onto the freeway, which had been protesters' plans. Not surprising, it seems like every year they try to take over a freeway in some regard. So that's what's going on right now here, police shouting, "Move back, move back."
We're going to also take another view, if we can, of the police effort to block the interstate. This was a strategy used by protesters last year during the May Day protests, where they actually got onto I-5 at one point, and the State Patrol had to close down parts of I-5 to get those protesters off for the safety of them and the motorists as well. And so police today are very much aware of the idea that protesters might target the interstate again. They have blocked off the on-ramps to Interstate 5 and Interstate 90 with their cars. And again, the police continue to use their bicycles to move the crowd south. They are now past Safeco Field, moving into Soto. And again, they're not stopping. They continue to make a fence with their bicycles. And then once another group of officers pushes forward, they make a fence, and then the back group of officers goes through, makes another fence. And in this way, they are marching the crowd with their bicycles further south of CenturyLink Field, south of Safeco Field right now. John? Ted, what do you see there?
From our camera there, they're pushing. Seattle Police
Okay, we're at
continues to.
5th and Dearborn, and I just want to show you a scene that we just came across here. Looks like a photographer, somebody here who was injured, bleeding, and paramedics are here treating this man on the sidewalk at 5th and Dearborn, just behind where all the protesters moved through as they continued heading down south. So we just came across this scene. This guy looks like a photographer, and he's getting the help he needs here with what looks like a pretty bad wound on his face. We're just north of where all of the action is, where all of the protesters and everyone moved through. And a lot of police here are now moving south toward where the protesters are. In their wake are left various some damage and individuals like this man behind us who we saw was injured.
I'm a little bit angry because, you know, I sacrificed over a year of my life to serve this country, right? And I think that it's absolutely our rights to be out here and to protest. It did get a little bit out of hand, seemed to have got a little bit out of hand, but ultimately, you know, I was just out here to protest and to show my support.
And you said you wanted it to be peaceful. A lot of people here that we've talked to are saying we wanted this to be a peaceful march. What do you say to those few protesters out here who did act out that led to this entire thing happening?
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen, I guess, right? I don't. It just took the whole message and just, you know, knocked it away, or it just took the message and distorted it, right? So it doesn't mean as much people, you know, like for instance, when you watch this on the news, you see what the vandalism
interviewing
that did happen.
an Iraq veteran who was marching along with the protesters. A quick tweet from Mayor Ed Murray saying there was a peaceful immigration march earlier today. Now we see senseless violence and property destruction from a different crowd. So Mayor Murray disappointed by what has happened. We will continue live streaming this action on our website, king5.com. Here's a look at some of the arrests made in the parking lot of the Costco on 4th Avenue South. So far, police say 9 people have been arrested for assault, destruction of property, and obstruction. 8 males, 1 female were taken into custody. Meanwhile, the FBI talked to a man who's accused of making the threats to police. He is not in custody tonight.
And today, Seattle's May Day protest played out on social media in real time.
King 5's Ryan Takeo was updating you from the front lines. He joins us now in the studio. Ryan?
Yeah, we too were embedded with the anarchists, tweeting and going live on Facebook, and also doing this virtual reality, using this virtual reality camera. You can see this is when the flashbang grenades were actually going off, and you can see we're in Belltown on 2nd Avenue. And by the way, this is on our Facebook page. You can see them setting off those flash grenades and basically forcing those protesters to go ahead and continue their way. They basically hurting those protesters that way. Want to show you this also playing out on Twitter today, because you have Seattle Mayor Ed Murray saying that there was a peaceful immigration march earlier today, but then he called it senseless violence, is what he was calling that evening protest. You can see in real time Seattle police talking about its 4th, 5th, and 6th arrests. We know that they made 9 in total. And then Seattle police also tweeted this out. Some of the weapons collected, you can see the bars right here, looks like bolts, what they call a Molotov cocktail right there as well. And this is something that we've been keeping track on, and we've posted more videos throughout the day, and you can check out our King 5 Seattle timeline on Twitter. I'm Ryan Takeo, King 5 News.